When I was a kid, my family took a vow of silence. It was the last time I ever spoke to them. My parents were the type of people who seemed so perfect that you couldn't help but wonder what kind of skeletons they had in their closet. They spent their Saturdays in soup kitchens, Sundays in church service, and weeknights delivering Meals on Wheels. My mom, dad, and sister Julie created a cappella group called Songs for Our Seniors to perform in nursing homes. You would think there had to be something more. Humans weren't endlessly kind, and everyone had their sins and secrets. But 10 years ago, when I was 12, it was easy to believe my parents were just good people. And they were. I wasn't oversaturated with the endless scandals I see now in the news. The ones committed by the perfect couple no one would ever suspect. I wasn't the opposite of my parents. I was no devil, but I wasn't a great kid either. I acted out a lot after I was diagnosed with Stargardt disease, a form of juvenile macular degeneration. In short, I was mostly and legally blind. It's not terrible. I listen to audiobooks, write with talk to text, and believe it or not, live a pretty normal life. Maybe I'm hard on myself, but it's hard to live up to my parents, whose biggest flaw was that they were gullible. I suppose when you're a saint, it makes sense that you'd assume the best in people. So even when we were on our yearly vacation at the cabin my aunt lent us in northern Minnesota, it was no surprise that they still found a cause they could donate to. "Jamie!" The screen door clapped, and my mother rushed into the rustic den. We ran into the loveliest people on our hike. They told us this way their church has been spreading awareness for different issues we'd never even thought of. I had stayed behind to watch TV. Hiking wasn't my favorite activity, being legally blind. "Mom, please don't give strangers you met in the woods your money." She laughed and bent to kiss my head. My son's so funny. They didn't ask me for money. They're signing people up for a vow of silence. I rolled my eyes. "A vow of silence? Do I have to, too?" "No," she said, disappointed. "You don't have to if you don't want to, but they said our vow can be in the name of whatever we want it to be. The point is to make a sacrifice, and what better place to do it than out here?" She gestured widely with both arms. "The great outdoors." "How long would it be?" I asked nervously. "Oh, just for the night. A few hours, don't worry." I nodded. I was worried. It sounds silly, but being mostly blind, I didn't do much nonverbal communication with my family. I wouldn't be able to see any reassuring smiles as we sat outside in silence. Julie walked in with my dad. "Hey, bro." She came over and kissed me on the cheek. "I'm going to bake some banana bread. Half the loaf just for you." Why couldn't I have a sister that roughed my hair and called me twerp like in the cartoons? Why did everyone in my family have to be so much better people than me? That evening, just before dark, I dangled my feet off a dock while I had watched what I could see of the sunset. If it could just stay like this, I thought. If my vision didn't get any worse, I could still see some beauty in the world. I came inside to my parents and Julie putting on their shoes. "Jamie, there you are." My dad came over and plucked something out of my hair. "We'll be back in 20. Vow of silence starts at the church where we say our prayers before. You don't want to come, do you?" I shook my head. "Didn't think so. S'mores when you get back. Think you can get a fire going?" They seemed anxious and excited to leave, which wasn't like them. I remember thinking that maybe there was something they weren't telling me, a rarity. "Be back in a jiff." A jiff it wasn't. An hour went by with no sign. I called all three of them, but all their phones went to voicemail. The second time I called my mom, I was out by the fire after getting it started. I froze and brought the phone down slowly, as I thought I heard ringing far away in the woods. Part of me suddenly didn't want to reveal where I was, but I shouted anyway. "Mom?" There was a rustle and a thud in the distance. "Mom? Dad?" I started to back up, and soon I was sprinting. I tripped in the dark on the way to the door, and got a minor concussion with a face full of pine needles, but I made it inside. I could hardly see a thing out the window at night, not even shapes. There was a slight glow of the fire dying in the distance, but that was all. I sat by an open window and listened. A few minutes went by, and there was a sound like the creak of a rope under pressure. Then all quiet and crickets. I thought something was horribly wrong, but 15 minutes later, I saw their headlights dancing down the rutted driveway, and I had to keep from crying in relief. I waited for them on the porch and listened to the car door slam. "That wasn't 20 minutes, I yelled while they were still 50 feet away. No response. Of course not. Afraid by their lateness, I had forgotten about the stupid vow of silence. As a blind kid, the vow of silence was scary to me. I had this fear of not knowing whether my family was really my family when I couldn't hear them speak. But as they got closer, I was assured. My mother's birthmark on her cheek, my father's big nose, the smell of Julie's shampoo, they were all here. I sighed in relief. But something was off. My family seemed like they were all in shock. Even if they couldn't speak, I still expected them to be their bubbly selves. They were still and slow-moving, as if they were possessed. And I realized, frowning, they hadn't told me what the vow was for. I had a fire started, but it went out, I said. My mother put her hands on my shoulders and patted them, and my father started towards the fire pit. She then took my hand and we walked together through the woods to join him. Soon there was an enormous fire. My dad kept throwing logs and dragging great dead branches into it. Whoa, I said as logs popped and shot sparks. This is a fire. Julie came out with a paper bag from the kitchen, and I salivated, remembering s'mores. Things felt back to normal, and as the stress of the last 2 hours left, I felt immensely tired. The lonesome cry of a loon came from across the lake, and I closed my eyes, and I slept. It couldn't have been much later when I woke. I wasn't a very big 12-year-old, and my father was holding me out in his arms towards the fire. "Dad?" I shouted. "Dad, what are you doing?" My heart began to race as I realized maybe my perfect family wasn't so perfect, or maybe they believed strongly in what I thought all along, that I wasn't perfect enough for them. The shape of my mom appeared in front of me. Her eyes seemed set much deeper in her face, and she ran a wet thumb across my forehead and across. "Mom! Dad! Please!" I whimpered. My dad scooped me up so I was cradled in his arms and stretched toward the house, my mom and sister in tow. I tried to calm myself. Maybe this wasn't a sacrifice. Maybe my parents just got a little too invested in one of their acts of charity. But then I saw something. They were close, but I was still too blind to be sure. At the edge of the firelight, I saw what seemed to be the shapes of bodies hanging from the trees. They swung gently at the end of nooses. My dad kept carrying me to the house and into my bedroom. My mom peeled back the sheets, and as I was gently laid on the mattress, Julie took the blankets in around my neck. Then, one set of cold lips after another kissed me goodnight. The three of them walked to the door and stood just a few feet away in the hall light. Just as I thought my dad seemed to be a few inches taller than I remembered, they placed their hands on their chins and peeled away their faces as if they were masks. They turned off the hall light and vanished into the black. Mom? Dad? Julie? But I knew then as well, as if I had seen it with perfect clarity, that my parents and sister were hanging in the trees, with their faces sawn from their skulls. I didn't hear them walk away, and as I sensed them stare at me from the dark, I laid in bed crying quietly in terror, wondering the same thing then as I do now each and every day. Who were those people? I put my head under the covers as I heard the floorboards creak as they watched me. Who were those people that wore my family's faces?